Hello and welcome to the Why We See Movies podcast. I'm your host, Ron.The. Joining me as always, we got Paul.
Hello, Governor!
And Ivan.
What's up?
Today we're going to be reviewing Kingsmen, The Golden Circle, starring Taron Egerton and Colin Firth. Later on we'll do our RANT and RAVE segment, but first, let's see what's going on inside the entertainment world with...
News on the mark!
Hey guys.
What's up?
Not too much. How you doing?
Doing all right.
Good. Okay, another oops for me on the last show. When I was giving my review of Mother, remember I was talking about that Cinemascore grade that had got an F?
Mm-hmm.
I'd mentioned that there were only 8 films on the list. An astute listener corrected me and said there was actually 19 films that have received an F grade in history.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, since this thing started, I think in the late 80s. 31 years of storing data. Only 19 films have made it, so I want to correct that. And I do have the full list if you guys are interested.
Oh, I'm curious.
Okay. I would say 2 types of films fill out the list. One is horror movies that obviously can be pretty awful.
Pretty
and the other one is
too.
avant-garde cinema from directors who are trying something different, much like
And
Mother.
people don't get it.
I was surprised to see that I've seen 7 of the 19 films, and actually I've loved 3 of them. I mentioned Solaris and Mother's now on the list. So I'll give you the full list here. Alone in the Dark, The Box, Bug, Darkness, The Devil Inside, Disaster Movie, Dr. T and the Women, Eye of the Beholder, Fear.com, I Know Who Killed Me, In the Cut, Killing Them Softly, Lost Souls, Lucky Numbers, Mother, Silent House, Solaris, The Wicker Man, that's the remake
Nicolas
with
Cage
Nicolas
one,
Cage,
yeah.
And Wolf Creek.
Huh.
So I don't know how many of those you guys have seen.
I haven't seen many of them, but there's certainly a few on there that I've heard of.
Is the box the one with,
That was the Richard Kelly movie, the guy who did Donnie Darko.
is that Joel Egerton?
No, that's another one.
Oh, this is the one with Cameron Diaz, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
Lucky Numbers was John Travolta. I've seen like maybe 1 or 2 of those.
Yeah, the 7 I've seen. I've seen Bug with
No.
Ashley Judd. It's a William Friedkin film. It's actually a pretty interesting movie. That would be more on the avant-garde list. Dr. T and the Woman is a Robert Altman movie with Richard Gere. It's not great, but I think it's fine. It's I love Robert Altman, and it's definitely, I wouldn't give it an F. In the Cut was an interesting movie with Meg Ryan, done by the director Jane Campion. And Killing Them Softly, yeah, that was that Brad Pitt one. I really enjoyed that movie.
I don't know why people.
Gandolfini's last performances.
Yeah, when Brad Pitt plays that hitman.
It reminded me of a kind of a mid-70s kind of gangster film, low-key, and it's not a lot of action, but it's got a lot of
That's probably why a lot of
atmosphere
people
to
didn't
it.
like it, because it was more of a character-driven movie than action-driven.
It's funny how many bad movies I've seen and would almost expect to see on this list, and then yet some movies that you think, well, probably not awful, they are on that list.
Again, this is 31 years of cinema, and only 19 films. So obviously each one of these had something particular about them. I should mention how the grading system works. It's all on a curve. Some of the audience and people in the audience might have loved this movie, but all it needs is a few Fs and a few Ds for the majority for the curve to really slide on this list.
Gotcha.
So many more films will get an A+ than an F. An A+ is much more common. The fact that Mother made this list, I can understand it again. And just like Solaris on there, another one that I love. These are not movies for mainstream audiences, and you almost have to expect the F grade and almost want to relish it when you get it and be like, it's exactly, this is a film meant to provoke. So anyways, yeah, I thought that was an interesting list. When I checked it out, I definitely wanted to see each movie, and I could definitely tell which camp I would fall into, whether I would have any interest in ever seeing it. And I would say all of the avant-garde films that made the list I have seen, not all of them are great.
At least they're provocative in the fact that they might stimulate you, might make you think something different, which if that's the kind of movie you're watching, that's what you want, whether you love it or hate it, you want something different.
Quite an arbitrary grade anyways. I don't think anybody's basing what movies they're going to on this. I just thought it was kind of interesting.
That is interesting.
Okay, moving on, a couple of celebrity passings in the last week. Hugh Hefner died at the age of 91.
Kind of wonder if did he stroke out because of natural causes or just too much Viagra?
Stroke out.
Who knows?
I just feel bad for his 26-year-old wife. That's
What is she going to do without him?
Yeah, in the big mansion.
I can't imagine that she was planning a long-term marriage.
No.
Probably, exactly.
But
Growing old
he
with
was such an advocate for women's rights. I mean, something that you wouldn't necessarily think of considering the magazine he's associated with, but he did a lot of things that people aren't aware
him.
of.
For civil rights, too.
Absolutely. And And I mean, you got to give it up to the man. He lived in his jammies surrounded by many beautiful women in a huge mansion. I mean, sounds all right.
His persona was almost so ludicrous that you could not take him seriously, but he was a very serious man, and he did care about a lot of serious issues. And if you see any of I think there's been a couple of really great documentaries made about him in the last few years, and there's a lot more under the surface than a lot of people might think. And in the movie world, they were talking about making a film about this guy for years now. I remember DeCaprio was attached at one point, but I think it's the fact that he was alive. You know, he was going to retain a lot of creative control on the film. And it's funny, now that he's just passed, just today, they've announced that they're working on a biopic of him, and Jared Leto is attached to play him.
Because he can't interfere, is what you're saying?
Exactly. Now that he's gone, right? So he's kind of, it's all up for grabs. Yeah, that could be interesting. I think his life deserves to be made into a movie. It's a fascinating one.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
And then just yesterday, some tragic news from the music world. Tom Petty died of a massive heart attack at the age of 66. I am a huge Tom Petty fan. I loved his music. I just grew up listening to him, and I'm going to miss this guy a lot.
You forget how many iconic songs he had until you hear just a vast array of them used in many retrospects.
I'm getting really tired of them just playing Won't Back Down, because this guy could fill 2 greatest hits
albums. Not just Won't Back Down, it's Free Falling as well. I've heard that one so many times, and play a variety of songs, not the same like 3 or 4 over and over again, because he's got such a celebrated
So
catalog.
You guys were all fans.
I was a huge fan. Unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to see him live, and I'm a huge concert goer, so I would have really liked to have seen him live.
He only came to Calgary once.
Yeah, and I missed it.
I managed to see him, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, my wife managed to go as well, but I don't know what happened.
Yeah, he swore he was going to come back, but I guess that's not going to happen anymore.
What's crazy, though, he dies at 66, and Keith Richards is still going strong.
He is an anomaly. Man.
And what a bizarre circumstance, just the announcement of it, because my wife told me when we met after work, and then you hear that CBS had announced that he died, and then they retracted it, that the LAPD said that they couldn't confirm he was dead, and the coroner said, no, we've got no record of that. And then sadly, obviously, later that day, they confirmed that he did, in fact, pass away. So they gave you that little glimmer of hope that maybe he would pull through, but
yeah, it was just really weird how the whole thing happened.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
an absolutely tragic day yesterday.
Definitely.
All over the place with the Vegas shootings and all of that, which we're not going to touch on.
No,
but,
it was just the last kick in the nuts for a really shitty day.
I kind of stayed away from the news all day because of that, so I just kind of clicked it on late last night, and
plus the whole Edmonton thing too that happened and all that, and
so
the world is getting crazy.
Another giant in the music world. My favorites are dropping like crazy in the last couple of years here.
And there's only 2 traveling Wilburys left.
Yeah, I was a big fan of them too.
Yeah.
Tom Petty, gone at 66.
Into the great wide open, buddy.
Yeah. And if anyone out there is interested in learning a little bit more about Tom Petty and the history of the Heartbreakers, there's an excellent documentary made a few years ago from the great filmmaker Peter Bogdanovich. It's called Running Down a Dream. A great comprehensive look at the band. It's like 2.5, 3 hours long. If you buy the disc, it has a great concert from the hometown of the band in Florida. It's kind of a reunion show. Stevie Nicks is part of it. So that's a great concert, great documentary. If you're interested in knowing more about Tom Petty, it's called Running Down a Dream. I recommend that highly. Okay, back to the movie world and a topic that we keep bringing up again and again, but this time I think there's a good enough reason to bring it up. The Warner Brothers DCU division has announced that they're going to be de-emphasizing their cinematic universe with less focus on an expansive multiverse, working harder on getting each character and film right first, and forgetting about trying to squeeze into predetermined release dates. Wow, does that sound familiar or what?
I could swear we've been saying that all along.
All year. So, they must be listening to us.
Clearly.
Obviously, this is due to the massive success of Wonder Woman as kind of a standalone film with not a lot of emphasis being played on the DCU, and look at the results.
But they're still doing all those one-offs that have nothing to do with their universe too, where they're just making these random movies as well.
Right. So they're obviously less concerned with the multiverse aspect of it, and they're just going to be knocking talking about solo films from now on. Not that these characters aren't going to be linking up because the Flashpoint
Paradox.
The Flashpoint script, has just been turned in, and I guess Wonder Woman is a part of that film.
You got to think they're going to try to, lack of a better way of putting it, pimp her out as much as they can, put her in as much as they can, because right now it's not Batman and it's not Superman that's the focal point of that universe. She's the resounding success, so they're going to try to get as much of her as they can. And you can understand why, right? Like, kind of like with Marvel, Iron Man was never the biggest character in the Marvel comics, but he's by far the alpha males in the cinematic universe, so go with what's popular. And I think it's smart for them to focus on her.
I think that the whole Paradox movie, it's going to be tough. They're going to have to change it so much because that involved the entire Justice League. That could be an entire Justice League movie.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of counterproductive to what they were just talking about, saying that we're going to de-emphasize things and then our new script has nothing but extended appearances.
It'll be interesting to see what story they go with, though, right? Because if you look at when Logan was announced and we all assumed it was going to be the Old Man Logan comic book story, and it really wasn't. So they could just be borrowing elements
or much
of
like
it.
Civil War, too.
Yeah,
right?
and
Just
that's
use the
exactly
name.
it.
But
Use
we-
the name and elements of it, but not stick true to the source material.
But we knew that was going to be the case from the very beginning. Old Man Logan, they couldn't get all those characters into the movie because of rights issues. Same with Civil War. With this one, they can do Thomas Wayne as Batman. They have Wonder Woman. They have Aquaman. They have Superman. They can actually make a decent movie out of this because they actually have the cast.
But it doesn't sound like a Flash movie anymore, does it?
Not only
first standalone Flash movie.
But they shouldn't have done that they shouldn't have done this massive story for the first standalone movie.
Right, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, and not only that, but why would you want to redo a live action movie of something that was recently an animated movie that is going to be fresh in some of your fans' minds, right? Like, there's no element of surprise. Do an original story.
We'll see. Like, the script has just been turned in, so we don't know what the reaction by the studio is yet. They don't even have a director for it. Robert Zemeckis, I think, is still the frontrunner, but this script could be ditched and they could try something new anyway.
For sure.
Who knows? I know they're still having problems with Aquaman. James Wan, the director of that film, has said that he never understood, sounds like Donald Trump, he never understood how difficult it could be filming underwater. Like, really? Like, I guess they're really doing a lot of underwater work. Like, they're not trying to CGI.
But they are
water
also
effects.
doing, like, I've seen some behind the scenes stuff where they're just like
They're trying to do
flying
as
there.
much real underwater work as possible.
It's just
And
stuff that people
from Waterworld to The Abyss, big film production after film production has had nothing but problems with this.
For sure.
With
Like,
this element.
Waterworld, just recently watching the special features on the first 4 Aliens movies and underwater sequences there and all the issues that they had. Like, how would you not think that this could be a problem?
Right. Anyways, I hope that film turns out well too. All building up towards Justice League just in a few weeks here.
And apparently some of the early screenings have been very positive.
Yeah.
So.
I hope the Joss Whedon effect is going to
But
help it out.
the cast also came out and said that he's putting out Zack Snyder's movie. That's what the cast
I've heard
said.
so conflicting. Like, he's changed the composer. Danny Elfman is now doing the score. I've heard that he's rewritten a lot of sequences. I've heard it's going to be a lot more Joss Whedon than you might think. Even though Zack Snyder's still getting the full director's credit, Joss Whedon is getting a writing credit and a producing credit as their way of massaging the deal kind of thing.
I just want a good movie.
And I agree. And to anybody out there listening that thinks we hate DC and love Marvel, that's not the case at all. We just want an entertaining movie, and we obviously hope for the best, but we can see the problems and hopefully they end up being nothing. But we hope for the best and we want the best. Like Ivan said, I want a good movie.
I love these characters. I love these characters as much as the Marvel characters. I want to see them treated properly.
Absolutely. I'm a huge Batman fan. Ivan's wearing a Batman t-shirt right now. Like, we are huge fans of these characters. We just want to see them get the treatment they deserve.
Give us a good movie.
That's all we want.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. In other movie news, my favorite director, one of them, Martin Scorsese, has announced a possible project, reteaming with his frequent collaborator, Leonardo DiCaprio. Sounds like they're going to be working on a biopic of Teddy Roosevelt, who, of course, was the 26th president. He was vice president to McKinley, I think, when he was assassinated, and then served 2 full terms. What else is he famous for? He said, walk softly and carry a big stick. The Panama Canal. He's on Mount Rushmore. So we're talking about a pretty influential president. One thing DiCaprio was not is anywhere near the size of Teddy Roosevelt. All the pictures you see of Teddy Roosevelt, he was a big guy.
Yeah, very substantial man.
I don't know if he's going to try to pull off some girth and do a Jake LaMotta or not.
I don't know, but whenever you see Leonardo DiCaprio when he's not shooting movies, the guy does not look
Right. Maybe
like
this
he's
is
in shape.
Maybe this is his excuse. He's looking for a film to
So
pick
you
out.
can stay fat. Yeah, you
Yeah.
just see whenever you see those pictures, he always looks like a hobo and not in good shape at all. He just seems like he gets like a crazy ass trainer before his movies.
Mhm. Would you guys be interested in this film?
I'd be curious to see it for sure, especially about, admittedly, a man that I don't really know a lot about. Not that you can always treat movie as truth, but with the talent that's attached to this, it makes me instantly interested.
Yeah, out of the four on Rushmore, from Lincoln to Washington to Franklin Roosevelt, he's probably the least well known, I would say, out of those four. I've seen him done in movies a few times.
He was never the focal point. He was just kind of a character.
Like when Robin Williams played him in Night at the Museum. Brian Keith played him well in this movie, John Milius film from the 70s called Wind of the Lion. That's a great portrayal of him. He was kind of a big, rugged guy, right? I know he was a Rough Rider. Back in the days of Cuba, I remember he did some sort of charge or something. He was famous for that. And I think he was shot once during a speech and shot in the shoulder and continued his speech. I wouldn't go to the hospital. Like he was that type of guy, right? A real kind of...
Couldn't see the current president doing that.
No. Ripe time for a presidential biopic, maybe. And
right.
Another thing that he was famous for was trust busting, getting rid of all of these monopolies. So there's a lot of meat there.
So maybe reminding people what a president's supposed to be like.
Maybe that too.
Yeah, for me, it's I'm more interested in the people behind the movie than the movie. It's you know, another biopic of an American president.
Yeah, Scorsese's never gone anywhere near this though, kind of doing a classic biopic. So I'm sure he would have some sort of take on it.
Has this been one that he's been kind of holding on to, or this
totally
is
out
a
of the
fresh?
blue.
Yeah,
this is like the third project that they're supposed to be working on. So, and I'm more interested in the other two actually. One is The Devil in White City. That's about the famous serial killer in Chicago, one of the world's first mass murderers. And then another one called The Killing on the Flower Moon. I mentioned that on the podcast earlier about the Osage Indian tribe and how they had oil and a bunch of them were murdered. So those sound more interesting to me, more Scorsese-like.
Yeah.
But if he can fit all of these in, hey, fine, you know, go to work, Marty, and pump out these three films. That'd be great. But yeah, as far as interest goes, this would be probably third on my list.
But I think they're probably also looking at which one's going to be the most bankable these days. I think studios are definitely...
Well, I think that
spend money on
DiCaprio is a serial killer. I think that would...
Yeah, that's true, actually. That would actually be pretty interesting.
Right now, Scorsese is currently filming The Irishman with De Niro and Pacino and stuff, and that's through Netflix.
Yeah.
So if that production works well and everything goes well, who knows? These films might all be Netflix films for all we know.
Who knows?
Yeah, who knows indeed. Also, that was a bit of news. I don't have enough information about it to talk right now, but it sounds like the Oscars might be changing their rules for voting, all because of Netflix.
It makes sense. The way people consume their entertainment these days, I think, they have to.
Some Academy members were worried that a film, like a Netflix film, only being in the theaters for a week to qualify for its Oscar run and then pulling it out immediately after and saying it's a theatrical movie. But what makes a movie these days is still up in the air. Yeah.
Well, they had to change their rules on documentaries, didn't they? Because of the whole OJ thing.
Exactly. That they mentioned that. They don't want a movie being able to win an Emmy and an Oscar in the same year. There should be a difference between these two things, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, interesting news from that front. And then finally, here's something from the Department of Bankrupt Ideas.
Yeah.
You guys know how much I love Shane Black's The Nice Guys from a few years ago.
I loved it too.
And I was kind of hoping,
I still need to watch that, actually.
Really?
I really want
to. You got
to
get on that, Ivan.
Yeah, so great.
I was kind of knock on wood, hoping for some sort of sequel or something.
Me too.
Well, hey, guess what? Fox wants to do a follow-up.
Really?
Yeah, except it's going to be on TV.
Oh, no.
It doesn't have Shane Black involved at all. It's set in the present, not in the 70s. And they want to replace the two leads with two women and call it The Nice Girls.
Oh, man. This ranks right up there with the Lethal Weapon TV series that they're going
No, this
now.
is, I think, even worse, but
well,
at least that had some similarity to
yeah.
Is this supposed to be a TV show?
Yeah, that's what they're thinking. How can you even think about that you're doing anything in relation to this original product? And it's just taking a name that people might remember, changing it. It's just, this is such an insult to this film.
It's not going to resemble the source material at all.
Great thing about that movie is Ryan Gosling and Russell Crowe are in it.
Absolutely. They sell that. And the young actress that plays the daughter, like, you're invested in those characters, and they take you along for the thrill ride, and just sounds like a pale imitation
It's
of...
ridiculous.
Sounds awful.
It's so bad. It's like saying we're going to do a Star Wars TV show, except, it's not going to have anything to do with outer space. It's going to be set on Earth, and
it'll be a guy driving around in a car called the Enterprise.
Right. Yeah, sure. How dumb.
Yeah.
But the thing is, though, I mean, if not a lot of people saw that movie, they might just watch the show because...
The only reason that they'd be trying to use this name is for anyone who has seen the original movie. They're only going to remember,
that movie wasn't that really all that pop.
But then why do any sort of reboot reimagining of it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, why even give it the name The Nice Girls?
Right.
Yeah.
The only cachet the name of that movie would carry would be for a sequel, because that is the only logical next step.
I just thought that was bonkersville.
Yeah. Might be good, but I can guarantee you I won't be watching
And
it.
I did actually watch Lethal Weapon, the TV show.
And?
Thanks.
Enough said.
All right. Shall we move on to our feature review?
Let's do it.
We're from the Kingsmen tailor shop in London. Maybe you've heard of us?
Today marks the beginning of a new age. Wait, I'm going to show you. Say goodbye to the Kingsmen.
Kind of got a bit of a save the world situation here.
Welcome to Statesman.
As your American cousins, we'll be working side by side.
Let's get started.
Kingsman: The Golden Circle was directed by Matthew Vaughn. Stars Taron Egerton, Colin Firth, Julianne Moore, Mark Strong, Pedro Pascal, Halle Berry, Channing Tatum, and Jeff Bridges. The plot? After a drug cartel leader initiates an all-out attack on the Kingsmen, Eggsy makes a narrow escape to America where he seeks help from the Kingsmen's sister organization, the Statesmen. Okay, we'll do our first thoughts on the film. Paul, unfortunately, hasn't seen the film yet.
Unfortunately not. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, you can sit in with us while we yak about it.
I will do so.
Ivan, what's your first thoughts on it?
I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was as good as the first one, but I enjoyed it overall.
You're a big fan of the first one?
I did. When I went to watch the first one, I saw the trailers. They didn't do anything for me. Honestly, I was so pleasantly surprised that I came out of that movie. I was so pumped. We were all talking about how much we loved it. It was great. This movie, I enjoyed it. It was one of those I knew what to expect going into it. The trailers were definitely misleading, in my opinion.
Gotta stop watching trailers, Ivan.
And I think that the trailers shouldn't have given away some of the big things.
Can't comment on
the trailers.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of the trailers.
Oh, so the trailers gave away something that was big, which was not a big part of the movie, but they kept playing it up in trailers repeatedly. So those kind of things were kind of threw me off. But for the most part, I liked it. It wasn't as good, but I still liked it.
Were your expectations met?
I don't know. I think maybe they were a bit down from my expectations. Maybe because I liked the first one so much. I expected it to be up there, and then it wasn't as good. So that kind of hurt it.
Okay. I'm pretty much in the same boat as you. I really enjoyed the first one. Just like you said, it was such a surprise. It kind of came out of nowhere. I can't remember what else came out that year action movie-wise, but I think everything around it sucked. This kind of just was like a real gem. It kind of just stood out and been like, hey, this was kind of a movie I didn't even know I wanted. And wow, it's pretty great. So I went in with pretty high expectations to this one. I don't know if they were quite met. I still really enjoyed the film. I had a good time watching it, but it's like good quality junk food. It's like, as soon as I left the theater, I probably am not going to think about this movie much. But I like the characters, I like the leads, and some of the action scenes in it are pretty great. Overall, I think it's a bit too stuffed, too much plot, too many characters. It does go on too long.
Yeah.
I think the first one was kind of leaner and meaner, kind of knew what it wanted. So I would recommend the movie, but you're right, not as good as the first one.
And I would definitely say that there was not a single action scene in this second movie that was better than the church scene.
Nothing
in the first
compares to the church scene for sure.
Because that was so amazing.
But that was kind of a classic one-of-a-kind scene too.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they didn't try to replicate the church scene either and kind of try to do a lame rip-off of it in another way. It's just let that scene stand where it, as it should. It's just kind of a classic.
And that's too bad, not having seen it, is knowing that, I mean, you're right, like the church scene and the pub scene, and there's a couple really iconic scenes in the first movie that there's nothing that even, by the sounds of it, even comes close in the sequel.
I think the opening action sequence in this movie, the first kind of chase that happens right away, is great. The whole fight inside of the car and outside of the car, I think fantastic. I was like, oh wow, is this what we're going to get? A whole movie like this? That might be the best action sequence in the film, I think, the first one.
I think because later on they went kind of too sci-fi with it almost.
Would you say this movie gets a little too silly and over the top?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of over the top stuff, and it was just with the whole tricks and the stuff they were doing. Like in the first one, yeah, they had these gadgets, but in this one, they went like Moonraker type gadgets, right?
And that's the beauty of the first one, is that it's over the top, but it knows when
to draw the line.
Exactly.
Yeah, it did have, I would say, more stakes, the first one, than this one. Well, for one thing, I think the reveal that you're talking about, something in the trailers that we'll get into spoilers, kind of undermines a lot of the tension that's going on in this movie. We can talk about that later. But then you got to remember in the first movie too, Samuel Jackson's character, the whole villain of the piece, he is kind of cartoonish, a cartoon character. Sure. And they're doing kind of the same thing with this one with Julianne Moore.
Yeah, definitely.
Like she's, I think, almost trying to hit the same kind of ridiculous that Samuel Jackson, remember, with his lisp and everything? You know, she's trying to be a little over the top. And I think the whole movie, because of that, it does kind of cut into the tension a little bit, because we kind of know we're playing in kind of more cartoon kind of movie.
That didn't really bother me. I think it was more the fact the guy, if you've seen the trailers, the rope that almost becomes like a lightsaber.
Right.
It's
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah.
Right.
Where
it kind of reminded me of Whiplash from Iron Man 2, that kind of.
Yeah. So effect. It was just kind of this is also kind of making fun of the Bond movies, over the top villains with these crazy plans. And I think the actors are just having fun with it, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, this movie is not taking itself seriously. No. Did you feel like perhaps like I did, there's too many characters in it?
Not a lot of them were really used.
Exactly. That's what I mean, right? Like, I mean, Jeff Bridges, I thought, was going to be a much bigger part of the film.
They made a huge deal about Channing Tatum. He was in the movie like less than Jeff Bridges. He was there for like, 5 minutes? Like Halle Berry had the biggest part out of all those new guys.
Yeah, I didn't even know she was in the movie until she showed up, and I was just like, oh, that's kind of funny. Yeah, there's a lot of characters in this movie, and probably not all of them get the due that they should. So that's what I mean. It's kind of overstuffed. I think they could have eliminated a few characters and got rid of a few plot lines, and this movie probably would have flowed better.
I agree.
Before we go any further, do you want to get into spoilers so we can talk about this properly?
Sounds good.
Spoilers.
So, what did you think about the controversy about the whole sex scene in this one?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Neither one of you. So, in the first movie, there was the whole controversy about, remember when he saved the princess?
Yeah.
And then he was like, can I get a kiss? And she's like, you can do me in the butt. And everybody lost their minds.
Yeah.
And they came out, so it's like they're making fun of Bond movies because Bond bangs all the girls, right? So in this movie, remember that scene in the tent with the girl put in the tracker? That caused a lot of, once again, they were like, it was over the top. And I was like, what was over the top? It's not like they showed
it is over the top.
It is over the top, but it's not like they showed, her naked or anything.
No, they're not. I was smiling at it. I didn't have a problem with it. I don't think our audience was even shocked by it.
But it was a huge problem before the movie. I even saw the movie. That's all I kept hearing about was this.
Really? That's what makes a controversy these days?
Pretty much.
It sounds to me like if you're in the theater to watch this kind of movie, that's the kind of thing you should almost expect. And it sounds like that it's people that haven't watched the movie that are offended by this.
I was surprised at seeing how the scene was going to play out. I was like, are they actually going to go all the way with this? And I was smiling at the audacity of what they did. That was kind of cute. If I was British, I would probably say it was very cheeky.
Especially when you see some of these other movies, when they do sex scenes, like, what is the big deal? Especially when they're making fun of the Bond movies.
Yeah, I had no problem with that. Okay, do we want to talk about Julianne Moore? What'd you think of her as the bad guy?
Honestly, I found her creepy. She had that subtle kind of always smile on her face, but she's a downright evil person.
As drug cartel leaders go, we've seen so many of them in TV and movies. Yeah. It's just such a cliche. And she's like nobody we've ever seen before. Her and her whole Poppy Land in the forest.
Nowhere,
yeah, it's great. I thought all of that was great. Her 50s kitsch. And, it's all just brand new that we've never seen in a movie before. So I thought that was kind of fun.
Because usually for drug dealers, they're played at these she's upset that she's not being recognized as one of the most successful CEOs in the world because what she does is illegal.
And what did you think of the Statesman? I thought that whole middle chapter in the film, once they go to America, the film kind of slows down for almost a good, seems like 40 minutes or so, where I was kind of waiting. Is there going to be more action or something? It seemed like their whole drive to get there and get help, and then they just kind of stalled for a little while.
Yeah, it really does because, well, once they get there, that's of course when they find out about Harry. So that becomes like another subplot trying to deal with that aspect of it, which of course...
Obviously, we should mention that big reveal that you were talking about earlier was the fact that Colin Firth is still alive.
Yes, which they gave away in the trailers.
In the advertising for it. I think he's even in the poster.
Yeah, I think he is, which is kind of silly for something like that you would think that they're going to build to that payoff, and there's no payoff.
One person who was not happy that I read was Matthew Vaughn, the director. Yeah, was furious at the marketing department for revealing that. He thought that could have been one of the great surprises in the movie. And after seeing the movie, I don't think that it was necessary to put him in the advertising for it at all. I think the movie would have done all the dollars in business, the same amount of business that it did without him.
It's just, there's no call for it. Let people actually have some mystery.
Could you imagine some of these classic movies that have plot twists, like something as simple as Empire Strikes Back, how they'd market that today? Like on the poster, it would be Vader and Luke, I am your father.
That would be the catch line for the trailer.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or Psycho revealing that he's dressed up as his mother talking to her skeleton.
That'd be the poster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's idiotic.
So, yeah, I would agree that once Harry is introduced, the movie kind of stalls for a bit there. But the third act, I think, picks up once they're trying to retrieve the antidote.
Oh, yeah. At that point, it's just like majority of it is action scenes.
And there's that whole sequence with the gondola.
Yeah.
That, I think, is awesome. I love that whole sequence. I thought it was shot and edited fantastic. One of the better action sequences I've actually seen in movies for a while. It really gets your heart going when they're moving that fast. I thought it was fantastic.
I even had one of my favorite lines in the movie at the end of it. That was the first good shit I've had in 3 years.
That was my only laugh out loud.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty awesome.
His the old guy's delivery is perfect.
Yeah, it was.
So that was a fantastic action sequence. The next one after that, not so much. The final sequence, the whole showdown in Poppyland. One thing I didn't think worked great were the robotic dogs.
Yeah, that was a little much. Mm-hmm. And also, once they had all those other crazy gadgets and how they brought Harry back is explained, the show already went like sci-fi. So the dogs really didn't bother me all that much.
I just didn't think they were very interesting.
No, they weren't. They didn't.
Definitely not as cool as the girl with the blades on her legs.
No, of course not, because she had personality. These were just like metal dogs.
That's it, right. These dogs have no personality, right? So the fact that they're kind of the big heavies at the end doesn't really work for me. The one cameo that we should bring up, which is kind of funny because you wouldn't think. I'm sure the advertising didn't have this, but one of the characters in this movie is Elton John. Elton John has more screen time in this movie than Jeff Bridges and Channing Tatum, that's for sure.
Wow.
Oh, then like
and more lines. And more lines, too. And he's not playing anyone. He's playing Elton John. He's a character in this movie.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, it wasn't really working for me. I was like, it kind of reminded me of that David Hasselhoff from Guardians of the Galaxy. I was just kind of, enough of these kind of celebrity plugins.
Yeah.
But he kind of won me over by the end of the movie, and the fact that he was given so much to do, I was like, okay, he actually pulled it off. He was actually pretty good in this.
It was
as ridiculous as it was.
It wasn't as bad, but I also thought it's like, did you really need to give a bigger part to him than any of the other characters?
That's what I mean. Like, the more scenes that he got, the more ridiculous it was to me, that I was just like, okay, whatever, I'll just enjoy it. And his songs worked really well. They did a great job with the placing of his music.
I mean, Elton John pulling off martial art kicks and all this other stuff. It's
but they even
in high heels and everything.
They even had the tongue-in-cheek kind of moment to the audience where he's looking at the camera. So even he knows he's in on the joke.
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody in that movie knows they're in on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should talk about, I guess, the lead, Taron Egerton. He's really does a good job in this. He's a capable leading man.
Definitely. He was just as good in this as he was in the first one.
That's what I mean.
He had that personality. I thought he did an amazing job. I will say, top of the cast, we'd never mentioned Lancelot. I mean, I liked her as a character in the first one, and in this one, it was just to spoiler what happens, but I mean, completely wasted of a character, just like
Totally.
like 80% of the cast in this movie.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, there's just too many characters, and it could have been a little leaner. Like, it's 2 hours and 20 minutes, and I think this movie could have been a lot better if it was under 2.
And what did you think of the whole president subplot as well?
Oh, yeah, I was surprised to see that character. Bruce Greenwood, I think, played him, and Emma Watson as his
Which,
executive.
once again, they had some pretty big names for these almost throwaway roles.
For sure. Like, the movie is stuffed with great actors, that's for sure. And maybe that's the problem, is that they're only given a couple of minutes each. Again, the whole plan that she has is almost more ridiculous than Samuel L. Jackson's plan from the first one.
But then the president's plan is kind of insane. But I also heard that wasn't that almost supposed to be like Donald Trump?
Well, I don't know when this film was shot. I think anytime that you have a useless leader or a stupid leader, people are just going to automatically go, oh, that must be a Trump comparison.
Because I heard they removed something like Trump related from this movie.
Interesting.
So, what did you think of Colin Firth in this? Do you think it was needed to come back?
You know, I wish that it would have been a surprise. I didn't even see the trailers or anything, and I knew he was coming back.
Yeah.
So bringing him back does kind of undermine the stakes of the movie. Like, you know, if he's not going to die, then maybe you don't really think there's much tension going on with any of the characters. But he makes such a good team with Eggsy. They're such a good pair.
Definitely play off well with each other, especially the things that they did when he comes back. They did another bar scene, but he went a little differently, and it was actually done so well. Especially when they're just like sitting down and chatting. It was just, they play off so well from each other. And Mark Strong, I thought
Mark Strong delivers a great performance.
And I would say he was actually one of the best parts of this movie.
Me too.
Because he did such a good job in this.
Yeah.
He's good in everything, though. I don't think I've seen a bad Mark Strong performance.
He was the best thing in that terrible Green Lantern movie, that's for sure.
I absolutely agree.
Unfortunately, they did not take advantage of him.
So yeah, his character of Merlin is really interesting and kind of the glue that holds this whole movie together. That's almost it for performances, isn't it?
Halle Berry was all right.
Oh, yeah, like I said, I was surprised that she was even in it.
But her character didn't get to do a whole lot. It seems like they're setting up a spin-off.
I would say that there's definitely going to be a third Kingsman movie, that's for sure.
They already said that there will be. But who knows if there's going to be a Statesman as well, right?
You think they're going to try to do a multiverse with this?
I don't have to do a multiverse, but they can definitely pull off just a spin-off with them.
Halle
Berry and Channing Tatum and Jeff Bridges. It's possible. There's a lot of talent there. We'll see if Matthew Vaughn's involved.
Who knows?
Besides directing this, of course, he wrote it too. It's based on the comics by Mark Millar, right?
Yeah, but comics aren't the same. I haven't read them either.
Okay.
So Halle Berry's getting her Bond-esque spin-off, possibly?
Oh, yeah.
Finally.
So much better than the Bond one she was in.
Yeah.
Right.
With Bond, I think with Bond, by the end of Pierce Brosnan's era, they went too fun and they sucked. And now Daniel Craig's are going more back to like basics and making them serious again, which I'm liking.
Right.
You know, at some point you're going to go back and kind of make them crazy
I guess instead of Bond, it's more, I would compare this to kind of a lighter Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Like those movies take their world much more serious. It's not really over the top, as this one is almost comical and cartoonish. But still, I like this franchise so far. Sounds like we did like the movie, though.
We did like the movie.
It just
wasn't as good.
Right. I thought we loved the first one so much that maybe we thought the second one was going to elevate and be even better.
And once again, it was the whole fact, like, as much as I like Eggsy and Harry together, how they interact, and Merlin was a great addition, there was so much more to be explored.
In many ways, Channing Tatum and the Pedro Pascal character should have been the same character. They didn't need both of them.
No.
Like, if they combined the characters, it could have worked just as easily.
And what did you think of that character then? What happens to that?
To Pedro Pascal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, it almost seemed forced.
Yeah, I would say so too. I don't know if I was expecting it. It's the most over-the-top thing that could happen in that scene, so I should have been expecting it, but whatever.
But it's not just that scene, but it's just the fact his character changed, right?
Oh, that too.
Yeah. I wasn't talking about what happened to the character. Right. More like just how the character shifts.
That he does, yeah. I think the fact that, we were talking about the economy of characters, as soon as he kind of replaced Channing Tatum, I was like, why is he in this movie now? And I was like, oh, well, I figured out he must not be a good guy, right? I thought that was kind of obvious. Just the fact that he was even introduced at that point in the movie, that must be the reason he's...
But then he was never also the bad guy either. He never worked for the bad guys. Because he wanted it to happen.
Oh, right.
Due to his background.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I just kind of felt like they really should have fleshed that out better. So
this movie's way too busy to flesh anything out.
That's true. But they could have cut out other stuff to flesh it out.
Right.
Because to me, it just seemed like that shift was just way too sudden. The whole people in cages thing was also pretty ridiculous.
I thought all of that was pretty silly. Yeah, none of that really worked for me.
Yeah, and the fact that this woman has millions, if not
drones.
billions of drones at her disposal. It's like, really? Nobody thought to ask, why does this woman need to have like 1 billion drones available at all times?
I would have been rolling my eyes at that point, but the movie was just so over the top.
I will say one of the things that I found was a pleasant surprise. There was something that they kept hidden, was the return of another character, which we won't spoil, from the first movie, where you'll recognize them when you see them. But I thought that was a nice little surprise. And
yeah, you're talking about the other villain of the piece.
Yeah.
He worked really well. He's kind of the one replacing the girl with the blades, I guess.
True, but it was still entertaining. I even liked that fight scene in the end when they had the guns. I mean, it kind of reminded me almost of Desperado. He's got that suitcase that can shoot, but also it didn't also make sense because when it unfolds to become a shield, it's just flat. So it's like, well, wouldn't there be a mechanism for shooting the machine gun or rockets out of it? It doesn't make any sense.
How did you have time to think about that at that moment?
I don't know. That just popped into my head. No, but it was such a pretty fun action piece, though, I thought. Of course, it's not as great as the beginning one, but...
The shootout at Poppyland?
Yeah.
So did they do a good job of expanding the world and fleshing it out? Did it seem plausible?
No.
Oh my God, nothing's plausible.
No.
Well, fair enough.
Let's just say the world of the Kingsmen isn't fleshed out at all because we're not spending very little time in England.
Yeah.
Right? They're almost in America right away. So really all we're seeing is this new organization, the Statesmen.
And even then, you don't really get to see a whole lot of the Kingsmen at all.
You don't really learn that much about the Statesmen either.
No.
You just know they exist and that's it.
There's so much going on. You just got to kind of pick up what you can as it goes.
And both of these organizations don't even know the other one exists.
Somewhat.
Yeah. So when these guys show up, they're like, I don't know who you are. I don't know. What are you doing here? And then they kind of took a while for them to be like, oh, we're actually on the same side.
One other thing I should mention that was kind of weird to see is the use of John Denver's Country Roads again for the second time in only 4 months after Alien Covenant.
Yeah.
Kind of weird that these two movies would both...
No, and then also in Logan Lucky as well.
That's in that too?
Yeah.
Is that right? Boy, John Denver is getting a lot of traction these days. It's a John Denver renaissance.
Yeah, so really hope that in the third one they don't do the same things that they did in this one.
In the next one?
Yeah. I guess in the third...
I actually don't know what I want to see in the third one.
In the third one, it only makes sense that they're rebuilding the Kingsmen.
I do think that the very last thing that happens to Eggsy in the movie, the big moment, I think that's going to be preyed upon in the next movie. If they do a third one, I don't think we're going to be seeing her again.
I was expecting on Her Majesty's Secret Service ending.
Right, something like that. Right.
Yeah, that was actually complete. And I was actually surprised they actually put her in this movie as his girlfriend.
I could see the third movie being a little darker.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Because how much can you really do with her in there as well, right?
You always want to motivate a character. You just kill someone they love.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Matthew Vaughn has on his schedule next for directing. I'm sure a third one will be coming out shortly. So I think we've chatted enough on it.
I think so. I mean, it was a fun movie. There's not really a whole lot to really dissect it. I want to see a good movie, good action sequences.
Oh, for sure. I can't imagine anyone not liking this one. If you like the first one, you probably just won't love it.
Yeah, as much as the first one.
Right. Recommendation for me? And,
as well. Definitely.
Cool. Why don't we move on to our rant and rave section? Paul, since you've been sitting quietly for a while, do you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll go first.
Cool.
This will be, for loyal listeners of the podcast, some of these will be reruns of movies that you guys have talked about in the past, but I'll just do some quick hits. First one, Ron, you mentioned this on the last podcast, and I mentioned then that I was interested in seeing it. I watched Jerry Before Seinfeld, the Netflix special, and I agree with everything you said, Ron. If you're a Seinfeld fan, you're gonna watch this. It's just a fun trip down memory lane with Jerry, where he started, he got, his background and growing up and everything like that. A really fun, enjoyable watch when you're waiting for the hot water tank repairman to come.
And I'd say you're probably familiar with like 80% of the material.
Oh, yeah. If you've seen his stand-up, you've heard some of it before. I'm not as familiar with his early career. Yeah. And he's so charming. Like, Jerry's just, for a man that claims to just not like people, he's so engaging and likable. So, yeah.
The world's most lovable cynic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a really fun watch. And yeah, if you're a Seinfeld fan of the show or the man, you've probably already watched it. And if you haven't, you should, because it's just a really enjoyable, fun watch.
It's on my list.
And the other one, actually, both of you mentioned this in past, and I don't disagree with what you guys said about this one either, is Tim Burton's installment from last year, Miss Peregrine's School for Unusual Children. For those of you that don't know, it's the story of a young boy who discovers this kind of hidden school for obviously peculiar children that have certain abilities or peculiarities about them. And man, for a movie with this kind of cast, you would expect a lot better use of that cast. And for a movie that's got Terrence Stamp, Eva Green, Sam Jackson, Judi Dench, you'd expect far more. Like Judi Dench, her appearance in this is almost a throwaway. You wonder why she's even in it. It was disappointing. I didn't dislike the movie, but I wouldn't say I overly liked it either. I just kind of expected more. Like it was fine. The performances were fine, but certainly nothing engaging. And actually watching Asia Butterfield fumble through this movie made me really glad he didn't get the Spider-Man part, because he was up for it, and he just delivers a very
lackluster,
monotonous performance. I mean, he's your touchstone for the movie, and he's not engaging at all.
No,
not at all. So,
and what'd you think of the villain? Nice casting choice, Samuel Jackson.
Oh,
I thought he was ridiculous in that movie.
Yeah,
it was him just being himself and way over the top.
Absolutely.
He's a fine actor who can deliver performances other than Sam Jackson.
Yeah.
But he hasn't done that in a bit.
Yeah, it just kind of like, you guys, funny enough, you guys are talking about his performance in the first Kingsman and how over the top it was and how that worked in that environment.
Exactly. Right, he was good in that.
It's the same level of absurdity, but in the wrong tone of a movie. Like, that is so out of place in this kind of movie. And I'm not even sure I understood or cared about what the intricacies of the plot were by the end of the movie. Like, the more the movie plotted along, the less I cared. And I mean, there's some decent performances by some of the younger cast, but yeah, just kind of all around like a half-hearted effort. Like, the style was fine.
It's all just much ado about nothing.
Yeah. If you're bored and just want something on in the background like Ivan, throw it on, I guess. But I don't know. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it better than I did.
No, I'd agree with what you said. Yeah. It's not a bad film, but it's just not a very good one.
Yeah.
No, it's not a movie that, because there's a series of books and it's one of those like, I have zero interest in continuing this on. And
read the book. It's much better.
That's what I heard. But who does reading anymore?
And then the third one, which Ron, you mentioned briefly on the Oscars podcast, Hidden Figures. It was released last year, directed by Theodore Melfi.
Nominated for Best Picture.
Right, which I can understand why it was nominated for Best Picture, and I can certainly understand why it didn't necessarily win Best Picture, because there's nothing really groundbreaking about the movie other than the story itself. It's kind of a paint-by-numbers assembly of a movie. Like, there's nothing outstanding or noteworthy about the production of the movie itself. It's a straightforward movie, and I don't think that hurts it at all, and I think that works for this, in that it lets the story and the cast kind of stand on its own, and that's the most interesting aspect of it, and should be. And for those that don't know, it's a story about this group of 3 African-American women back in the 60s that helped NASA achieve their goals at the time, that they're integral to getting the space race going and getting rockets in the air. And they're facing sexism and racism, and they're in an environment where, you know, the groundbreaking work that they're doing isn't appreciated by the people that they're doing it for. I'm sure some of that's exaggerated to a certain extent. I mean, it's a movie. They're going to do that. But I think it's really effective, and I think it's a very well-told story. I think the cast is very good in it, and they're all likable. You've got Taraji P. Henson, Octavia Spencer, Janelle Monáe, Kevin Costner, Kirsten Dunst, who actually I had no idea was even in this until I watched it, and then Jim Parsons, obviously of Big Bang fame, who just doesn't really stray too far from the Sheldon character really in it. But a really good, likable cast, and I thought it was, all in all, not a groundbreaking film, but a really enjoyable movie. I really enjoyed it.
Those true stories and biopics can be well done, even if they're just traditionally told.
I agree. I think, yeah, it had the perfect mood, perfect tone, and like I said, just all in all, really likable performances, and you're really rooting for these women and some of the hardships that they suffer. It's unfortunate.
And an interesting aspect of history that most people had no clue about.
Yep,
you know,
I agree.
I know I didn't.
I had no idea about it.
Yeah.
So, strong recommendation for me. I think whoever watches this, you'll be thoroughly entertained and you'll learn something. It's a very good movie.
Excellent. That's all you got?
That's all I got.
So that was Hidden Figures, Miss Peregrin's School for Peculiar Children, and Jerry Before Seinfeld.
You are correct, sir.
Okay, cool. Ivan, what do you got today?
All right, so I'll do 3 as well.
Okay.
So my first one is going to be a rant, and it's going to be from a movie that Paul brought up, and that was Batman and Harley Quinn.
I'm sorry.
Oh, wow.
Whoever the fuck put this movie together, I don't know what the hell they were thinking, but wow. It is
Even worse
not a
than
good
Batman
movie.
versus Superman?
Oh, yeah.
Just joking.
It was, oh wow, this was a bad movie. It was just, tonally, it was all over the place. I mean, Harley Quinn and Nightwing having sex, like seriously? You see no reason for it other than just doing like butt shots of Harley and tit shots. Like the Harley Quinn going, oh, I hate being sexualized, and all these guys slapping my ass and doing this. And then she's undressing in front of Nightwing as she's saying all this, and she's like, well, I guess I'm just going to bang you now. It's like, what?
Okay, so, but what is the movie?
Poison Ivy and what's that other green guy?
Floronic Man.
Floronic Man. They basically find this formula that kind of created the swamp thing, and they want to unleash it, so it changes everybody into like plant people. So they basically turn everybody into plant people. They'll care about the environment. So they need to get Harley Quinn because she's friends with Poison Ivy to find her. That's why they need her. I'm like, really? Batman can't really find these people on his own. He needs her. And then he goes into like complete nonsense, like 60s Batman nonsense. And he just jumps back and forth through that. And then they had a couple extended music numbers, which it just seemed like time filler. Like the whole thing in the bar. There was a couple of nice little Easter eggs in there. It was like a henchman bar. So you got to see henchmen from the Batman movies and the animated TV shows. That was about the only thing good in this movie.
And that's the worst thing is there's the odd, really interesting idea wasted on such a awful movie. While I watched it, I was really struggling to figure out who this movie was for. Because if it was just overly silly, that's not my Batman. But then I could at least say, okay, well, this is clearly aimed at a specific audience that I'm just not part of that audience. But because there was some mature content, it wasn't aimed at kids. There was slapstick fart jokes that's not aimed at adults. So, yeah.
And especially after the criticism of the whole Batman sex scene with Batgirl in The Killing Joke, they decided to go with Harley Quinn sex scene with Nightwing, which, once again, what are you doing? Are you just not even listening to anybody anymore, to any criticisms? So I'm definitely glad that I was able to keep myself from buying this movie and borrowed it from Paul. And sorry for you that you wasted your money.
Special features, baby.
And I'm the one that usually, whenever I see something with Batman, it's freaking going on with me. So I somehow found self-control, which is amazing. But yeah, avoid it.
Okay, that is one big rant.
So my next one, this is going to be a rave because I like this movie. Have you heard of Bunraku?
Mm-mm.
So Bunraku is like a Japanese form of storytelling where, guys have a black background. They wear black suits and you don't see them, but they use like big puppets and whatnot. So this movie's kind of done in that style where the buildings kind of don't look like buildings, kind of look like background sets. So it stars Josh Hartnett, Demi Moore, Kevin McKidd, I believe, Woody Harrelson, and Ron Perlman. And you know what? This story's kind of basically world kind of went post-apocalyptic after like a world war. Guns are outlawed. So now it's gangs with swords. They're not allowed to use guns. And it's kind of told, they kind of mix it. Like, I thought he had really good action scenes, fight scenes, because it was hand-to-hand combat with swords. But then just kind of the background where the buildings, you can look at those buildings, they're cardboard cutouts almost with like lights. So it's kind of mix and match.
But the actors are on screen?
Yes.
Okay.
So I really liked, because I've never seen something like that, so I really liked it because it was different. Even though the storyline is basically drifters coming to town, you got to take on the big bad guy.
Same old.
Yeah, but I really liked it. Just because due to the cast, I thought they did a really good job. The fight scenes I really liked, and I just liked that it was different, honestly. So for me,
got me curious just about the technique that they used.
And so where did you watch this?
I've heard about it a long time ago. I have it at home.
No, I've never heard of this movie.
Yeah, so I recommend it. It may not be to everybody's taste, but I think it's worth a watch.
Yeah, sounds like the type of thing you'd turn off in a minute if it wasn't your thing.
If you don't like it, yeah.
Right. Bunraku,
yeah.
Okay.
And then my last one, and that is going to be for all you gamers out there, the Super Nintendo Classic Mini. Love that thing. I actually managed to get my hands on it. Love it. It looks exactly like Nintendo. The power button is the same power button. It's got the controllers. It actually looks pretty good even on the big screen TV at home, like 60-inch TV, which I was pretty amazing. I mean, it doesn't look amazing, but still, for those, 16 big graphics on the big screen TV, it looks pretty awesome. And it's portable. Like, literally, it fits in my hand, like right here. So I've actually been using it at work for like breaks and lunchtime because hook it up to a monitor. The games are amazing. Pretty good selection. I wish they had more. Or, you know what? If they made it like Wi-Fi and you can just pay like $1 per game to like download, they would have made so much money because I probably would have spent like another $200 just getting games. I would probably have gotten everything.
That's actually something I was surprised they didn't do with this and the previous one where it was just the NES Mini. I just blindly assumed that, oh, well, this is pre-stocked with these games and then you can add to the library.
But from what I heard, it's also an issue with...
rights?
Yeah. Apparently, Nintendo, they don't own the rights to all the characters and stuff. So that's why they can't do them. Like Death and Return of Superman. Do they still have the rights for Superman?
Well, and even the Super Star Wars games that were on the Super Nintendo, right? Like those were ones that I loved as a kid and would want to replay.
Yeah, so I definitely thought they should have at least left the option open there. So maybe if they can work something out. But still, I'm happy what it is. So...
I've never heard of this. I am not a gamer, as most of our listeners know. But as long as you're having fun.
Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Love it.
So it's for all of those people who are feeling nostalgic up there.
Oh, they sold out in Calgary within a couple hours.
Wow. What are they selling for?
$100.
Oh, yeah.
And then within an hour, they were up online for $250. Because some people specifically went out and bought them so they can double the price online.
Sure,
yeah,
of course. Okay, so that was the mini Nintendo, Bunraku, and...
Batman and Harley Quinn.
Right, and the infamous Batman and Harley Quinn. Yeah, boy, both of you guys to go so down on that one. It's the type of thing that I almost want to see, almost out of curiosity now, because it's so awful.
I would have brought it for
I'll
you.
skip it. Yeah,
I could have brought it for you.
I just returned it to him before we came here.
We went so down on it like Nightwing on Harley.
So, it's kind of funny. It almost sounds like the people who created that have never even have no concept of the character of Batman.
And yet it's Bruce Timm who was behind Batman the Animated Series. So
yeah.
Interesting. So that leads me to my rant and rave. I guess I'll do this one first. It's a good segue. My big rant on similar subjects. I know earlier in the podcast I swore that I was not going to watch The Inhumans.
Oh, no.
But the more bad reviews it got, I had to see it just out of that morbid curiosity that I have. And oh my God, was that a struggle to get through the 2-hour pilot? I guess without commercials, it's only about, 85 minutes or 90 minutes. It's as bad as you've heard.
Oh, wow, really?
Or worse. It is awful. Much like we were just talking about it, you almost get the idea that the people behind the show have never read an Inhumans comic, have no relationship with these characters, have no relationship with even what comic books are all about. The performances are dreadful. The writing is so bad. Like you thought Iron Fist was bad. When I said I saw Iron Fist, I compared it to like bad shows from the 80s.
Yeah.
This is like bad shows from another planet.
Oh, wow.
It's so awful. And it had so much potential. You're dealing with characters that are so rich and have storylines of 40 years in the comic books. And you're just like, what are they doing? The guy behind it is Scott Buck. He's the showrunner and writer of this mess. And he's the guy who did Iron Fist. And my God, am I going to stay away from anything that has this guy's name on it? You guys sounded insulted by that Batman and Harley Quinn. I was insulted watching this.
Oh,
That's
wow.
how dreadful it is. I can't imagine anyone liking it who's past high school. It's atrocious.
Wow.
Glad we're not reviewing it for the podcast.
But this is
I couldn't imagine seeing this in the theater. Could you imagine spending money and going out of your house and parking and sitting down and watching this? I could barely get through it on my couch.
Well, what I thought was crazy was I was reading somewhere that this was Ike, what was his last name?
Perlmutter.
Perlmutter, who, of course, had that huge thing with Kevin Feige, and he was booted off the movies and put specifically in TVs. And they said that this was his passion project. That he wanted this kind of like screw you to the movies, that they can do something like this big.
I can't understand that.
But then also heard like even the director came out and said that they gave us like 8 days per episode, and they was like the cheapest.
That sounds like a smoke screen saying it's a passion project, because there's no love put into this at all. The costumes, people have said there's better cosplay costumes out there. The set deck in it. Oh, it's just awful. It's stuff that you'd see from a high school production, like some play or something.
You can see better fan-made videos?
For sure. It's beyond bad.
They probably had higher budgets too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't imagine anyone defending this unless you haven't seen anything to compare it to.
Because I actually did read one review where it said it's not as bad as it sounds.
That's what I've heard too. It is as bad. It is. And the performances, the guy who plays Black Bolt, his name is Anson Mount.
Got mounted?
Right, yeah. And the woman who plays Medusa,
Serinda Swan.
Yeah, I don't really know them from anything else, but they're dreadful in it. And I'm not saying they're bad actors because I can't compare them with other performances because they've been given nothing. And like you said, who knows how much they had to shoot in such a short time. These look like first takes, and they didn't have time for a second take.
And Serinda Swan has played a DC character as well.
Is that right?
Zatanna on Smallville.
Oh, well, I'm sure she did a better job. It's not even a performance that she's doing with Medusa. It's all just bad looks and the CGI for the effects. It's all terrible.
And I heard they cut off her hair as well. Probably just so they don't have to keep using her powers.
Yeah, that's one of the big spoilers, I guess, in the show if you're watching it. Good luck even getting that far in it. Yeah, the ratings for it weren't all that bad for it, but I can't imagine what the next episodes are going to be. I think there's a lot of people like me who were watching it out of sheer curiosity, and I'm not coming back for any more.
And I heard they already said that there's not even going to be a season 2.
Yeah, they already said this is it.
Yeah, unless...
It's a one-season event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, unless something drastic happens, like ratings pick up really good or things get better. I heard that it's basically just dead in the water.
The worst episode of S.H.I.E.L.D. is better than this by far.
Wow, that's saying a lot.
It sounds like the kind of thing that you'd almost expect them to produce in like the mid-90s. Before there was the glut of comic book stuff that we get now where, you saw the really awful Justice League TV movie or whatever where they just had no idea how to treat the characters and treat the material.
This
it
is
almost sounds like that.
Tiny bit above the Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie.
And that's exactly what I was thinking when you were describing.
Actually, some of the performances in that are probably even better than the performances in this.
Yeah, because they got a second take.
Yeah, maybe they gave a shit. I don't know.
Wow.
Anyways, stay away from it, people. The Inhumans, an absolute train wreck.
And you would think with how much money that they're making that they can afford to put some into this.
Mm-hmm. And to think that Kevin Feige wanted to make this into a movie and what Marvel Studios could have done with this property. I almost want Marvel to make a movie out of it now, just to show them up.
Just to be like a fuck
this
you
didn't
to
exist.
They're going to have to take a while before they touch it because people are going to associate it with this.
Hopefully, so few people will even register on this. Yeah, it's just a blip. That's another big rant. And people think that, just because we love superheroes and comic books doesn't mean that we're easy on everything. That's for sure.
No.
Okay, in funnier news, bigger rave. The new season of Curb Your Enthusiasm started last week. I was very excited about that. The premiere episode was hilarious. Larry hasn't lost any of his charm or wit or
tenacity,
assholishness. What's the word for that? There's got to be a word for what Larry is.
Razor sharp wit.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, this is the return after a 6-year hiatus. During that time, he had a play on Broadway, off Broadway, that he had written and performed in for a few years. And before that, he did a movie that not a lot of people that I know of have seen. I think it's great. It's called Clear History.
Never even heard of it.
It's directed by Greg Mottola, who did the movie Superbad, Paul, and Adventureland. Wow. 3 good movies. Yep. It's written by Larry David and Alec Berg, who is a frequent Seinfeld writer. And it co-stars John Hamm, Eva Mendes, Amy Ryan, Danny McBride, Philip Baker Hall, Kate Hudson, J.B. Smoove, Bill Hader, and Michael Keaton.
Wow.
So it's got a totally stacked cast for sure.
Yeah.
I'll give you the IMDb. A disgraced former marketing executive plots revenge against his former boss, who made billions from the electric car company they co-founded. John Hamm and Larry have started this car company, and it's on the verge of greatness, but Larry leaves the company because he doesn't like the name. The Herald that John Hamm has named it after his son. And on that alone, Larry has left the company and decided to go it alone and lost billions when the car became the biggest thing in the world. So it's all about after that happened, Larry kind of goes into isolation, and to Martha's Vineyard it all takes place. And he's kind of living his own life, changed his name, and has created a whole new life for himself. And then John Hamm comes to the island and decides that's where he wants to live and build this giant house. And Larry has to deal with the fact that his new neighbor is his former enemy. It's kind of the basic plot of it. If you like Curb Your Enthusiasm and you like Larry David, the character he's playing is named Raleigh, but it's really just Larry. It's Larry being Larry. It's kind of like an extended episode of Curb. So if you like that show, I would say you'll like this movie. Like I said, it's got great performances. Everyone's good in it. It's got lots of laughs throughout it all. And it was an HBO movie, I should mention. So if you have HBO, maybe it might be on their movie guide if you want to take a look for it.
Interesting, yeah. If you have HBO Canada.
It might be on there. So it's called Clear History. Larry David, comic genius. Check it out.
I will.
Okay, that's all I've got this week. Let's wrap it up. Next time, we'll be back to discuss Ryan Gosling and Harrison Ford in Denis Villeneuve's Blade Runner 2049.
Fuck yeah.
Are you a replicant or a replicant?
I'm a replicant, all right. Oh, I cannot wait. Until then, please subscribe and give us a rating on our iTunes Apple Podcast. Every little click on there really helps us out. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if interested, you can always comment and search for our past reviews on our website at whyweseemovies@libsyn.com. Thank you for listening and take care.
Later.
Ciao, ciao for now.
Adios.